I have occupied this bench long enough to recognize that cases appearing trivial on paper often unravel into profound human complexities the moment a person speaks. Ava Mercer's file initially looked like a standard collection of administrative grievances, parking tickets, towing and storage fees, penalties for missed hearings, and a troubling assault notation alleging she spat at the bench during a prior appearance. The city demanded a staggering $12,460, but as rain drummed against the courthouse windows that morning, first softly, then with the urgency of knuckles against glass, everything the paperwork claimed to be true began to dissolve. I was already in my robe, holding a file thick enough to bend in my hands. The courtroom smelled of wet wool, aging wood, and burnt coffee. The grayish morning light cast a tired shadow over everyone's face before a single word was spoken. As always, the city's pursuit began with numbers and balances, concluding with the final damning phrase meant to end all questioning: assault on the bench. The city was not merely trying to collect debt. It was attempting to brand Ava Mercer as a threat. When I looked at her surname, the whispers in the hallway suddenly made sense. She shared the last name of the city's police chief, Daniel Mercer, a man whose reputation entered rooms long before he did. Half the courtroom anticipated arrogance, while the other half expected backroom favors. I expected only a person, because looking for the human being is the only way I can perform this job and still sleep at night. When the side doors opened and Ava Mercer stepped inside, the collective gaze of the room shifted. She wore a faded green coat missing a collar button, layered over a diner uniform washed so repeatedly the fabric was surrendering. Her jeans were clean but worn thin at the knees. One of her shoelaces was brilliant, stark white. The other was flattened and gray. People desperately trying to hold their lives together invariably wear their repairs right next to their wear and tear. Her hands revealed far more than her clothes. She had the red knuckles and roughened skin of someone who battles harsh winter air and industrial soap, bearing a pale burn mark near her thumb, the kind acquired by kitchen workers who move too fast because they simply cannot afford to slow down. She kept her hands rigidly clasped, terrified that if she let go, they might tremble. Her lower lip was split at the corner, crusted over with dried blood, and a stray lock of hair clung to her cheek. She never bothered to brush it away, signaling a mind forced far beyond vanity into the realm of survival. Representing the city was Mr. Cullen Reese. He wore his neatness like armor, a pristine blue tie, a silver watch, and files arranged with geometric precision. He was not inherently cruel, but he placed his faith in records over reality, and those records had already dictated his perception of Ava. He methodically listed her infractions: unpaid tickets, mounting impound fees, missed court dates, and an outburst justifying an assault charge. His voice remained chillingly cool as he asked me to uphold every single dollar and label. I turned my attention to Ava and asked her to explain her life in her own words. She lifted her chin, not out of pride, but with the painful effort of someone who has carried too much weight for too long. Her voice, when it emerged, was scraped and dry. She revealed she had not lived with her father in nearly 3 years, a fact that instantly seized the room's attention. She survived by renting a single motel room by the highway when she had the money. When she didn't, she slept behind the diner in her car. That vehicle, which the city had eagerly towed, was not a luxury. It was her shelter. When I asked about her first missed hearing, she explained that her mother was suffering from end-stage kidney failure. Ava had been driving her to pre-dawn dialysis treatments before rushing to work the breakfast shift. On the morning of her first court date, her mother could not breathe. Ava chose the hospital. The city's paperwork simply recorded an absence. Reality recorded a devoted daughter. Mr. Reese interjected, arguing that personal illness does not erase municipal fees. In the narrowest, most technical sense, he was right. Rules must apply to everyone. But technical correctness often masquerades as justice, masking a system's failure to utilize imagination and empathy. I pressed Ava about the towing incident. She quietly explained that her car had been tagged outside the dialysis center. The ticketing officer ran her plates, noted her last name, and asked if she was the police chief's daughter. When she confirmed it, the officer laughed, mocked her ability to pay the fees, and summoned the tow truck. Anyway, trapped inside that car was her mother's blanket, her little sister Lily's asthma inhaler, school shoes, and a bag of groceries. Despite begging for just 10 minutes to retrieve her sister's inhaler and showing them Lily's school photo, she was denied access to the vehicle. The silence in the room grew heavy. Everyone was silently calculating the bitter irony. Carrying a powerful man's name without his protection buys nothing but a unique brand of humiliation. When I asked about her second missed appearance, Ava stared blankly at the bench before stating that her mother had died at 4:12 that morning. She spoke with the eerie, quiet cadence of someone reciting facts just to survive the hour. She had come to court that day straight from the funeral home, terrified of missing another. appearance, still wearing the clothes she had signed her mother's death certificate in. People often mistakenly associate a breakdown with noise and chaos. In reality, true collapse usually begins with profound stillness. Mr. Reese, undeterred, questioned whether grief excused threatening behavior. Ava tried to respond, but her words caught. She pressed her fingers to her split lip, pulling them away to reveal fresh blood. Before the situation unraveled, she managed to state that her father had not visited the hospital or the funeral home, sending only a patrol sergeant with flowers and a printed card. She let out a sound that resembled laughter but felt like glass shattering. As she looked up at me, struggling to breathe and speak, she coughed. A thin spray of blood and spit struck the wooden rail below my bench. Chaos erupted in under 30 seconds. A chair violently scraped the floor, a bailiff lunged, and someone screamed that she had spat at the judge. Ava's arms were brutally yanked behind her back, her shoulder slamming into the table. Before I could even stand, she was in handcuffs. "Take those cuffs off," I commanded. No one moved. I repeated its lower with absolute finality. My bailiff hesitated, pointing to the red stain on the rail. Mr. Reese immediately objected, claiming intent to assault could be inferred from the contact. I firmly reminded him that assumptions have no place in a courtroom when facts are readily available. I ordered the clerk to pull the hallway security footage, the bench camera feed, and the intake photograph taken during her booking. While we waited, I asked Ava a series of questions. Had anyone offered her water? No. Had anyone asked if she required medical attention? No. Had anyone documented her split lip prior to the incident? No. That stark silence indicted the entire room. A young woman had navigated public systems bearing visible bleeding injuries, and not a single professional had paused to see her as a human being before treating her as a problem. The video footage played above the jury box. The hallway camera showed Dava at the metal detector, hunched over, holding her mouth, raising a small, trembling finger to ask for a moment of help that never arrived. The courtroom angle showed her flinching as Mr. Reese spoke, violently folding in on herself as she tried to answer. She had coughed downward. The spray hit the rail, never me. Finally, the intake photo flashed on the screen, taken just minutes after her arrest. Her lip was split wide open, cut from the inside by her own tooth, her sleeve stained where she had tried to wipe it. The booking officer had noted the visible injury, but that crucial detail had been conveniently scrubbed from the city's summary. I turned my gaze to the prosecutor. I asked why a grieving young woman bleeding from a fresh wound was treated like a violent threat rather than a person in need. Stripped of his prepared arguments, Mr. Reese claimed courtrooms rely on order and swift action. I told him he was right about the necessity of order, but that order without judgment is just speed, and speed is how injustice often gets dressed and sent out the door before anyone notices. The law is merely a tool, and a tool is only as honest as the hand wielding it. When a hammer strikes the wrong surface, we do not praise the hammer. We correct the aim. This young woman had hauled debt, devastating grief, and a mouthful of blood into my courtroom, and the system had cowardly labeled her a danger just to close the file. With Ava standing quietly, her hands finally free but still held defensively close to her chest, I picked up my gavel. The true weight of a ruling does not reside in the strike of the wood, but in the heavy breath just before it, the moment the room realizes something permanent is about to occur. The assault charge was dismissed. The emergency arrest was vacated. Every fee tied to the impound period during her mother's final days, the storage charges, and the missed appearance penalties were entirely removed. I reduced the remaining parking debt to a realistic payable $120, stripped of all predatory interest. Ava didn't sob. Instead, her jaw simply unlocked, and her shoulders dropped a single inch an inch that communicated a lifetime of sudden relief. She offered a slow, formal nod, the gesture of someone overwhelmed by the unfamiliar touch of simple fairness. I ordered the clerk to bring her a cup of water, and she held it as if it were a source of profound heat. I confirmed that her sister Lily finally had her inhaler, then handed Dava a direct contact card for Denise, the court's family support officer, instructing her to call immediately for emergency housing and grief counseling. Sometimes restoring a person's dignity simply begins with showing them which door to knock on. From the back of the courtroom, Rosa Flores, the manager of the diner where Ava worked, stood up. She testified that Ava worked double shifts without a single complaint, packed leftover toast for her sister, and quizzed Lily on spelling words between wiping down tables. Looking directly at the city's table, Rosa delivered the defining truth of the morning: this child is not living off a badge. She's surviving in spite of one. 2 weeks later, the unedited video leaked to the public. It showed everything: the ignored plea in the hallway, the bloody napkin, the accidental cough. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Letters, grocery cards, apartment leads, and small checks flooded the clerk's office. A retired dentist fixed Ava's tooth for free. A landlord waived a deposit for an apartment near Lily's school. A mechanic repaired her car for the cost of parts alone. Within 2 weeks, over $4,000 in community support had arrived, not enough to cure her grief, but exactly enough to prevent a total collapse. 6 months later, Eva returned to my courtroom, this time sitting quietly in the gallery until the docket cleared. She wore an Eat Navy coat. Her hair was brushed smooth, and the scar on her lip had healed. Beside her sat Lily, proudly clutching a library book and a backpack holding her inhaler. Eva had secured a 2-room apartment. Above a florist, gained better day shifts with Rose's help, and was taking night classes in medical billing. She handed me a folded piece of paper, Lily's spelling test, bearing a perfect score, with the words "Ava help me" written in crooked pencil at the top. That single sheet of paper held more value than half the evidence I process. In a month, the public's reaction to Ava's story proved that communities are starving for genuine justice. The letters pouring in demonstrated that everyday people recognized themselves in her struggle. They understood the desperation of drowning while still desperately trying to row. The city naturally issued a sanitized public relations statement about balancing compassion with enforcement, attempting to replace accountability with vague atmosphere. I rejected the atmosphere, demanding revised intake checklists and body camera protocols to ensure visible injuries were documented before matters escalated. Chief Mercer never appeared in my courtroom, nor did he offer an apology. His absence spoke louder than any cross-examination ever could, leaving a shameful legacy of public power failing to shelter its own blood. Family court taught me long ago that suffering warps a person's language before it changes their circumstances. Women habitually apologize for existing. Children claim they are fine when they are shattered. Part of a judge's sacred duty is to listen for the lies that pain forces people to tell about themselves and to absolutely refuse to ratify those lies. I am Judge Judy. I have sent people to jail, and I have sent people home. If you sit on this bench long enough, you learn that the law cannot heal what it refuses to even look at. A human being is never defined by the worst second of the worst day they have ever lived through, not if we take the time to truly see them. What lingered with me long after Ava Mercer walked out of those doors was not the stain on the wood nor the media headlines. It was the quiet profoundness of a grieving daughter who walked into a room expecting to be crushed, and for once the room decided to lift her up instead.